Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome you to the webinar, Winning with Composable Commerce. And today we're going to be talking about a success story. I'm very excited to have three amazing companies with experts who understand what composable commerce is all about and have actually implemented it, joining us today. And we have some amazing participants from Grid Dynamics, Selfology, Commerce Tools, and Tacit Knowledge. And Tacit Knowledge, if you don't know already, has become a part of Grid Dynamics as of May of this year. So that's exciting news to share as well. So I'd like to get started with some introductions, and we'll follow that with a panel discussion. So we have, as I promised you, some amazing people today who are going to share their experience with you. And I'd first like to start by introducing myself. My name is June Bauer, and I have been working in high technology for many years in the Silicon Valley, and started my career at Apple and went on to take on many technology and marketing roles at companies like Adobe, Cisco. I worked at a startup that was sold to Alcatel-Lucent. I've also worked in venture capital at Lightspeed Venture Partners. So I have an interesting background and career, and I can tell you that it all kind of comes around to I love technology and I love marketing, and I love working with people like the people we've got on the panel today who have done some amazing things. And I'd like to kick it off by letting Michael Schultz give an introduction to himself. Michael.
Thanks, June. My name is Michael Schultz. I'm the head of product marketing at Commerce Tools. I spent the last 15 years in the e-com software space, both on the vendor side, but also on the agency system integrator side. And it's my pleasure to be here today.
Thank you, Michael. And Manish, would you like to introduce yourself?
Thanks, June. I'm Manish, Director of Technical Consulting at Tacit. In my role, I get to work with our current and potential customers on various initiatives. I get involved in early stage technical consulting, vendor selections, etc. Very pleasure to be here. Thank you.
We're so glad to have you, Manish, and thank you for joining. Rob, can you introduce yourself?
Sure. Hi, I'm Rob. I'm the CEO of Selfology, which is a new startup based out of Dubai. And we're really aiming to transform the way that consumers discover, learn about, and book cosmetic treatments online. So I've been in e-commerce and direct-to-consumer e-commerce more specifically for nearly 20 years with a focus on consumer beauty. So I led GHD's global direct-to-consumer platform for the best part of 15 years and did a huge amount of work with them, learned a lot about what not to do, but more importantly, what really works for scaling international businesses. And more recently, I was at a beauty subscription startup in London called Beauty Pie and helped those guys scale from the early stage to major Series A investment. And now I've taken up this incredibly exciting opportunity to start from scratch with a clean slate and build on the latest technological platforms, which I'm really looking forward to talking more about today.
Well, that sounds really interesting. And hopefully you can see that we've got some amazing participants today, and we're going to learn a lot. I want to thank you all for coming today to hear these gentlemen speak. And I'd like to also ask you if you would like to participate and have questions, please don't hesitate to put your questions into the Q&A, or you can also use the chat, and we will take your questions at the end. So add them as we go along. Feel free to do that. And if you want to wait till the end, you can certainly put them in then as well. But we'd love to have your participation and have you actively involved in this conversation. Okay, so because we're on a Zoom and it's always really, really tough to know what you all are thinking out there, and we want to do a great job for you, and we want to give you the kinds of information that you're looking for, we thought we would start with some polls. So can we bring up the first poll? And I hope everybody knows how to use a poll, but it should be showing on your screen. And we'd love you here to answer this question, which is, choose just one of these that best describes your company in regards to your composable commerce journey. So just choose one of these and click on it. And in a minute, we'll stop the polling and we'll see what the results are. So we want to understand more about where you are so we can better tailor what we talk about today to you. All right, can we bring up the results? Okie dokie, this is great. So what we can see here is that, well, over half of you are just starting to think about composable commerce and how you make this journey. So that's fantastic. It looks like also a good chunk of you are already up and running. So it's going to be and then much fewer are in the middle of the journey. And I have to say, one of our speakers, Rob, who's going to talk next about his, well, not in this workshop, in this session, he's going to talk about where he's at, but he's right in the middle there. So great, that's really helpful to us, and we'll try to tailor our comments to you. Let's take the next poll. Why composable commerce? So what we want you to do here is to select all the answers that apply to your company. And this could be in terms of how you're thinking about it, what's going on in your implementation, or, after you finish. But your choices are quicker and easier to add functionality, need to outpace our competitors, don't want to pay for features we don't need, want a platform that distributes technology and labor. We need an approach that is customized to our company today and into the future. Okay, so check all of them that apply to you. Okay, let's bring up the results. Oh, well, it looks like our distribution is fairly even. So the only one that got a few fewer clicks, it looks like, is want a platform that distributes technology and labor. And that's interesting because I think there's some huge benefits on the side of distributing technology and labor. So it may be that you haven't heard what it can really do for you, or it may just be that it's not a challenge for your company. But this is super helpful. So it looks like all of these things are important to you. So we'll try to touch on all of them as we go through the webinar today. Okay, that's awesome. All right, well, I thought I would kick it off just by describing what composable commerce is. You may not have heard it described this way, but when I think about it, I really think about the difference between the idea of getting some rubber chicken on your plate and told, here's your meal, versus the idea of being able to go to a gourmet buffet, see all of your favorite foods laid out in front of you, and choose exactly what you want and what's right for you. And that's what we're talking about. There's no reason why you can't today choose a gourmet buffet for your company when it comes to building an amazing commerce platform. And we're going to talk about how you get there today. So we thought it would be helpful to start with an introduction on what is composable commerce and why should you care. Just a very short introduction, so we're all on the same page with that. And Michael, I'd like to turn it over to you to give us an overview.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you. Yeah, for me, if you think about composable commerce, it's really a development approach of selecting best of breed commerce components and combining them into a custom application built for a specific need or use case. It's moving away from modular, legacy, all-in-one e-commerce solutions to purpose-built and future-ready experiences. And as much as that sounds very technical, and indeed it is, I'm not arguing it's not, the benefits or the why are also pretty clear to business stakeholders. It's all about budgets, costs, lower total cost of ownership, faster time to markets, whether that's features or market access, more flexibility, and most importantly, empowering business users to launch new products and features and touch points without worrying about some arbitrary or artificial roadmap or IT deployments. When you go to the next slide, you will see that this comes as a bit of a journey. You're probably all familiar with kind of like the e-com platforms and the purpose that they served initially, which was just serving desktop experiences and very much commerce-led. But with the advent of mobile devices, whether that's phones or tablets, we started seeing the benefits of decoupling the front end and the back end to cater for more devices, more touch points, in a multi-channel environment. So when retailers try to build out a consistent brand experience, that's also when we moved from multi-channel to omni-channel, and whether that's desktop, mobile, call center, what have you. But it's a clear separation of what we would now call also headless, where you're effectively decoupling the front and the back end. And on the right-hand side, you see kind of like where we are right now in that composable commerce universe, where effectively you're not only decoupling the front and back end, you're decoupling everything. And that's really where the juice is. And that also was heavily aided by SaaS platforms and the ability to offer very specific commerce functions via microservices and APIs. So whatever you now want, whether it's adding touch points, adding new features, enter and access markets that you want to move into, or whether you want to cater for social media platforms that are currently taking off, like TikTok or whatever the next generation is, you can now cater for those sort of commerce experiences. And when you move to the next slide, you will really see kind of like at least as what we know right now, the end state of composable, where every little honeycomb piece here is really replaceable by a best of breed solution. So whether that's your content management system, whether it's your payment gateway, whether it's your search provider, all of these things are effectively game and ready to be looked at to really focus on the use cases and cater to the customers that you want to be serving.
Michael, may I ask you a question?
Sure, go for it.
This sounds like amazing because it gives you so much flexibility in building a platform, not only for today, but into the future. But if you are a company that has another platform in place now, what is the cost going to be? What is it going to take to move to this new, completely different and kind of freeing architecture?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, if you look at your current or like a just general use case, I think if you are part of the retailers that are sitting on like an all-in-one solution, you're probably using a lot of the functionality that comes with the platform, but you're probably also enhancing it with an additional content management system or an additional, I don't know, product information management system or search. So you're effectively already paying double for the functionality that you already have covered under your existing kind of like legacy provider. So, but those ecosystem extensions are probably also the first that you can equally start with, kind of like exposing and extracting. And I think then when you have your agency or systems integrator of choice, you can work with them to slice and dice features and functionalities that you would like to start with first. So meaning you're encapsulating business functionality and you're sort of slicing that off the main chunk of your all-in-one solution. And the cost will effectively be a great result at the end, because you're not overpaying for things, you're not paying for upgrades, you're not paying for the additional maintenance costs, because you're just taking more and more away from the monolith.
Okay, that's actually very helpful to start to understand pragmatically how you might move from today's world into this future architecture. So thank you so much. And thank you for sharing what Composable Commerce is all about. So with that being said, I think now would be a great time to hear about how Selfology actually moved from, starting in the commerce world and then building this platform, and what it's taken to get the platform in place and what kinds of benefits they're starting to see from it. And I think it'll be a really good story, not only to understand the benefits of Composable Commerce, but also to understand pragmatically how you put this new architecture in place. So if we can move to just seeing our panel, that would be fantastic. And I would like to ask Rob if he can tell the Selfology story and enlighten us with the reality of what it takes to get into this new way of doing commerce, and what he's learned and how his company has benefited. So Rob, take it away.
Awesome, thanks, June. Maybe just to kick off with, I'd love to give a bit of context about Surfology and what it is that we're trying to do. So, as I mentioned, we're based out of Dubai, and today there are millions of people searching for cosmetic treatments every month in Google, looking for answers across social, going to Facebook groups, and really relying on word of mouth to find out about where would they go and take a cosmetic treatment, what treatment's right for them, what's the right clinic, what's the right doctor. And there's really no agnostic platform out there to give you the information you need if you're considering doing something, or if you're just interested in finding out more about what would be right for you. So what we're building at Surfology is what we hope to become the destination for cosmetic treatments. So this is going to be a platform where people can come and discover about the different cosmetic treatments that are available, research the concerns they have and potential solutions for them, and then actually be able to compare all the clinics and practitioners that offer those services, read user ratings and reviews, and actually book directly on the platform. So we're really looking to operate almost a full funnel marketplace. So there's a lot of marketplaces out there today, typically in the beauty space, so for nail salons, hairdressers, etc. And very much they're kind of solving a bottom of funnel problem. People know what they're looking for. You go to a marketplace, you search for a haircut. It's a fairly low barrier interaction, and you just book your treatment there and then. With cosmetic treatments, there's still, a huge amount of unknown information. It's a very advanced field, but actually the business itself hasn't really moved on. It's still very traditional, still very word of mouth. So when we looked at what we wanted to build, we knew straight away that content was going to be one of our core pillars. So we've made that a key part of the upfront experience to really create very, very in-depth, informative, original content, which we're writing ourselves. It's based around what people are looking for. We're shooting our own imagery. And we wanted to make that a core part of the experience, but also marrying that with a full-on marketplace where you can search for all the clinics, you can search for all the practitioners, you can drill down on the academic qualifications of a practitioner. You can look at the ratings and reviews, their before and afters, what results they're actually producing. So when we were looking at the tech stack, I mean, my background, I've done everything from open source MySQL, PHP sites back in the day with eDirectory and hacking sites together to make them work, to maturing with the help of tacit knowledge, to doing hybrid deployment and really going enterprise, and then more recently actually dealing with the monolith of WebSphere. So I knew when I came to Surfology that that was absolutely not the way we wanted to go, because we're trying to create this incredibly custom experience, which, don't get me wrong, some elements could be achieved within a monolithic platform, but actually you'd end up compromising massively. And exactly to Michael's point, you'd end up not using half the functionality that's in there, but paying for the license fee regardless. And I think what we're trying to do is quite custom, but equally it doesn't make any commercial sense to build from scratch. That would be inordinately expensive to go and build out your ecom backend, your search, your CMS, your ratings and reviews, your UGC. So what we've found so far with Composable is it's the best of both worlds. You get the flexibility of open source with the structure of enterprise. And I think one interesting thing that we found as well, and certainly in my experience, one of the previous things we used to have to focus on a lot was the site performance, hosting the site, having it on-prem, and really specializing in becoming infrastructure engineers ourselves and infrastructure experts. One of the things with Composable is you don't have to think about that. Like we've picked as our core stack. So we have Commerce Tools as the ecom platform, Algolia as our search engine, and Ampliance as our CMS. Now, we work with the guys in the vendor selection process to really test out the proof of concept. As a marketplace, obviously, we don't know which services we're going to be selling. We don't know what combination. We don't know how many. But we know that the clinics can come aboard, set their own product structure, and set up tens of thousands of different permutations of SKUs. And we tested this very heavily with Commerce Tools and actually saw that pulling back tens of thousands of product SKUs at once, we could do it in milliseconds via the API. So we haven't had to worry about focusing on the performance of all of our key partners. That is what they're expert in. That's the core offering. And that means that we can rely on those guys to really deliver an incredibly fast performance, whilst we orchestrate everything from the storefront, which is what we built with Tacit, hosted in AWS. And whilst that's quite technical, the end user experience means it's a lightning fast performance for the content experience, which is incredible for the user, but also hugely a major focus of what Google's looking for. You have to deliver content incredibly quickly, especially on mobile. So that's been a core element of what we've focused on. And I think the scalability as well, as I mentioned, we don't have a predefined SKU list. Our clinics are going to define what they're selling, what their price is, what their pricing variants are. You know, we are building, I always use this and I hate the analogy, but we're building the Shopify for aesthetics, and we're also building the content engine for aesthetics. You know, we're building a full platform to allow our clinics to actually manage their business direct to consumer. And we've done that via building a UI on top of Commerce Tools as the back end to actually help facilitate that that whole process. So it's actually quite technically complex to orchestrate all of that and bring all of that together, but to the user, it's completely seamless. And I think that was the key thing when we were looking at our technology choices, was to have that flexibility. I mean, you know, monolithic e-com platforms are fantastic for more standardized product SKUs or product variants. What we're looking at is there's multiple product variants. There's different devices, there's different anatomies, there's different practitioners, there's different price points and promotions. So to be able to orchestrate that all and actually tie it together with the content is actually really quite technically complex. But within the composable journey, we've been able to do that in a really structured way. So we've structured all our products in the commerce system so that they relate to the content on the front end. So the user actually is able to have a completely seamless experience from searching for information about Botox or fillers or laser hair removal, and then being able to dive straight into a commerce experience and actually goes directly to a clinic that offers that. And I think that's been a really, really unique element of why we picked the composable journey. I think also to build on that, we did things differently strategically. So we've actually went live 4 weeks ago now with the content only part of the website. So we're going live later this year with the booking element, but again, being composable, this allowed us to deploy really quickly. I mean, from the first line of code being written, we were live within 4.5 months, 4 country stores, fully written in English and Arabic. We've actually literally written War and Peace on aesthetic medicine. We've written over 500,000 words. And honestly, it was pulled together incredibly quickly and really in a very versatile way. So it helped us go to market a lot more quickly with the consumer experience. And now that's allowing us to actually build an audience, build traffic, build leads. And more importantly, we're now able to demo the real product to the clinics who we're bringing on board. So that's another big proof point for them. Instead of selling them a theoretical dream of you've got to be on this platform, it's going to be incredible for your business, we can show them the real platform live, give them real data about what's happening. So that's already helping us with our partnerships team being able to sell into the clinic business in the first place. So it's just allowing us to be a hell of a lot more flexible with the way we approach the whole business.
So Rob, it sounds like you've had a remarkable experience implementing a composable commerce journey. I'm wondering, is there anything to this date so far that you've learned that has really surprised you in a good or a bad way that you could share?
Yeah, there's a couple of things actually. I think one thing that's surprised me or that we've learned, and maybe is something that people would assume, is it really is not as expensive as you'd maybe think. You talked about it being a gourmet buffet. I mean, it doesn't mean that you have to go for the lobster. Maybe you can upgrade to the lobster in the future. But the beauty of it is it's a lot more equitable. I mean, with the monolithic platform, you're going to be paying X annual recurring license fee anyway, based on, in my experience, quite an opaque methodology of calculating your pricing anyway. With Composable, most of the license fees are volume based. So for a startup, it's perfect for us because we've partnered with all of our different platforms on a volume base, meaning we can grow with them, they can grow with us, and ultimately commercially, it makes a lot of sense because they scale as we scale. So that was a really nice surprise. And I think from a technical perspective, again, just finding the right partner is absolutely key to make sure that you have got the expertise to execute on this. But, you know, one interesting thing that we've talked about is it's kind of different to a monolith from the perspective of typically or traditionally with developers, you'll have a couple of key developers within the team who are the absolute product experts in that whole monolithic stack. They need to be there for every deployment. If one of them's away on holiday, you can't deploy. It ends up being quite rigid. With Composable, it's all API led. So it broadens out and democratizes actually the distribution of the work across the development team. So you can actually use, you know, I mean, we have a reasonably large front-end team. They're getting involved massively in a huge part of the platform because really they're just calling an API framework to pull back key information from commerce tools to be able to deliver the content on the front end. So it's been really, really interesting to see that aspect of it. And I think the other thing that surprised us is we are still operating in Agile. I mean, I've worked on and off with Tacit Knowledge for the last 10, 12 years and probably done hundreds of deployments with them every 2 weeks without fail. And we've gone into that as the backbone of how we've managed this project in Agile in fortnightly sprints. And probably halfway through the development, I remember we had a meeting together where we're like, hang on, the concept of a sprint almost doesn't really mean anything anymore from the perspective of now we can deploy whenever we want. Now the developers are working on individual features in much more isolated silos where once they've completed a feature, we can regression test it, they can push it into the main branch and it's live. So that's been a really interesting learning for us. Is actually, we're still using Agile, we're still using the core frameworks, but it's opened our eyes up to how we can move a lot more quickly and be a lot more dynamic with what we're going to bring to market.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And that was a great answer. Appreciate that. Also, I want to just play off one of the things you said, because somebody in our audience asked a question when Michael was showing his slides, and he showed that last honeycomb slide with all the pieces that ultimately make up your framework. What is it that lets the pieces get connected? So you mentioned the APIs. And can you tell us a little more? Because the specific question is there an API gateway or an integration pattern? So can you talk a little bit more about how these pieces get glued together? Because ultimately that's really key to our audience knowing how to actually go about making this happen and making this real. So if you would share anything you have there, that'd be great.
Yeah, of course. I mean, I might need Manish to give the true technical detail behind this, but fundamentally, it's through the storefront. So we've built a centralized storefront, which we host in AWS. And that is the core engine, if you will, that then integrates out into all of the different composable parts. So that is where we orchestrate all the API calls from this central storefront. And then we render the site and all of the applicable information from there. And Manish, I'm sure you have a far more technical answer than that.
Yeah, I can add a few things on that. So yeah, integrations, there are two parts of integration. One is how I orchestrate the customer experience and how I get some of the data into my enterprise system. So for the customer experience perspective, I would call it as omni-channel orchestration. So we use a GraphQL layer to orchestrate the various APIs, and it comes with the caching and such things. So performance is not a problem. And then with the commerce tool as an example, because it is event driven, say if somebody is changing a product, an event is triggered, and we could index that into the search engine straight away, or we could send that data into a third-party system. Again, we use all AWS cloud native approaches for that.
That was really helpful. Thank you, Manish. All right. Well, Rob, I want to, if I may just ask you another couple of questions. I think one thing our audience, because I think so many people are just considering composable commerce, could you talk to them and tell them what are the things that they should be thinking about now to prepare to go on this journey? What do they need to know?
I think it will largely depend upon where you are. I mean, I've had the complete luxury of starting carte blanche with a blank slate with zero technical debt. And, look, that's why this opportunity was so exciting to solve a huge problem and actually be able to think, if I were to start from scratch, how would you build a modern direct-to-consumer platform? So I think it really is going to depend what stage of the journey you're on with that. But I think number one, it's about finding the right partner, making sure that you've got the buy-in from the business and that you are ready for this kind of transition. But also, I think you need to think about what's most important for you in the business. Where's your biggest blocker? What's your biggest frustration? You don't have to go down the route of a big bang, full replatforming and move fully to headless or composable. You could, as per Michael's honeycomb illustration, you could start breaking pieces off, bit by bit. You could start maybe with the CMS, for example. Maybe that's, you're using a legacy CMS, which is just part of your e-com stack. Maybe you look at breaking that out and actually using that as your first headless piece. Then maybe moving on to search and bringing in a best of breed approach. So I think it's really going to depend on where you're at as a business. But main thing I would say is don't actually be concerned about it. Don't overthink it too much. It sounds like this huge concept, but honestly, for years now, people have been breaking out all of their marketing tech. So it's no different to the fact that you had a different CRM solution or a different ratings and review solution. Most core functionalities have been broken out anyway. This really is about now breaking out the core platforms and getting that best of breed to help really, really benefit your business. So don't overthink it. And I think just go for it. It really will unlock major growth for your business. And I think maybe just to add on to that, one piece that I've seen in my own experience is, again, with the monolithic approach, you can extend it, you can enhance it, you can drive custom experiences through monoliths. This isn't saying one's right or one's wrong. However, I've found that there is a limitation to that. You can end up almost coding yourself into a dead end, where if you want access to the next version of a monolithic platform, it's effectively a replatforming. The new versions may not be compatible with the version you're on. The way you've extended it may not actually be able to scale correctly. So you end up in a position where the total cost of ownership goes through the roof anyway, because you end up every 3-5 years getting to the point where you're like, we need to completely replatform. So I think if you are getting to that stage as well, that's a really compelling reason to choose Composable, because realistically, each platform is self-contained. You're calling a framework. They're responsible for enhancing the core functionality, and you're just calling that core framework and building on top of that. So realistically, you can keep scaling with that. You don't get into a dead end. These platforms can continue to evolve, and then who knows what channels are going to be available in the next 3 to 5 years. It means you're going to be much more prepared to actually change to trends you're seeing and consumer habits, and really not get into this dead end and ultimately have a completely flexible platform.
Okay, well, that was a great a great spiel there to make us all, I think, get excited about looking at this new form of architecture that can be, I think, so freeing to a company and to help each of you to build what's right for you. I love that, Rob. Thank you for sharing that story. Very inspirational. It makes me want to go start implementing. Especially as the marketing person on the other side, it's so nice to know that when you ask your team to build you something or enable a new feature, that it's not, well, our platform can't do that, or no, that'll take us, a year. It's just going to be phenomenal, not just for the team that's implementing it, but I think for all the business people who want to get benefit from it and don't understand why IT just can't do it. So I love that. Manish, I want to turn it back to you and ask you a question, because I know you've worked with a lot of companies out there and helped them to implement this new architecture and make it through this journey. I'm curious to know, there's a lot that's going to need to change when somebody moves their company into this composable world. And it's going to be beyond the technology itself, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on what's going to need to change around the technology and the advice you would give to companies, but also what other things will need to change in terms of processes and people and tools and training and all those things that go into making a move in this direction.
Yeah, sure. I want to touch upon some key points regarding that. So Michael mentioned about packaged business capabilities. So the best of breed solutions come up with packaged business capabilities. That is the difference between a traditional granular microservice. So the first key point is the businesses who want to transform, they should be very clear about the business capabilities. What are my current business capabilities and what am I looking for in the near future or in 2 years down the line? It is very important to then take those business capabilities and map that into the packaged business capabilities, because you may have some feature which is the USP of your company, and you may want to internalize that. So this approach allows you to pick up the commoditized software for things which is not that your USP, and then you have things which is your USP you can build internally and connect them together. So that is very important. The other learning we have had is it tends to work very well if you start from a reference architecture standpoint. So with Rob and Selfology, our initial starting point when Rob was initially talking about the ideas was going into the requirements and starting a reference architectures to map the business capabilities into what is out there, what is not out there, which is very important. And it helps in then, as Rob was saying, say if you are a business who have a legacy platform and you want to transform, it helps in then understanding, can I go live with something much faster, say search? Can I do that? Or can I just go live with some CMS pages? So that mapping that business capabilities is very important. The other thing also Rob mentioned was about the speed of deploying something, because say if you have made a change in your search system, you don't want to wait for your monthly release cycle if you're following a monthly release cycle approach to release everything together. So you can easily deploy that search changes. So adapting to that pace of change is very important for businesses, like knowing that how is it going to impact my day-to-day job, because some businesses may have people who are working on either day-to-day job as well as looking after the platform. So how does that, adapting to that pace of change works? The other thing to consider is automation. DevOps culture is everywhere there now. So automating your test suites, automating your CI/CD approach, the continuous integration, continuous delivery approach is very important, because you are responding to a change very fast. So these automations helps in gluing everything together. So depending on your, the business maturity, like if you are a startup or you are a scaling business or you are in the transformation stage, the approach can be a little different. It can look like, this is a technological transformation, but from our experience, I think involving business as soon as possible is of really great value, because starting from that business capability is very important in this journey. These are some of some of the thoughts I have, which could help people who are looking at a journey, a composable or a transformation journey.
Yeah, that's super interesting, really pragmatic and helpful. I'm just wondering, listening to you, and also when I was listening to Rob, is where does the user experience tie into the new platform? Is that something that you want to have an idea of before you start building out the technology, or how do those two things ultimately mesh together?
I would let Rob answer also, but in the case of Selfology, or I think traditionally with all these sort of projects, you always have a UX vision where I am going. Some people who are transforming may stick with the existing designs, or some people will always have a design agency coming up with the user journey. So yeah, it is very important in understanding the user journeys and designs upfront, so that will tie with the business capabilities, and then that will then map into what solution I am going for. Rob, you want to add something on that?
Yeah, I would say actually we kind of let the UI and UX experience lead the technology decision. So we thought about, what do we want this business to be? What's the core offering? What's the core functionality? What's that experience going to be like? So we actually started from a UX and UI and user experience perspective. That was the core of where we started as Selfology. We did bring Tacit early into the conversation because we knew we had this vision of what we wanted to achieve, but how we were going to do it was the big question mark. And that's really where the basis of going down this composable route came from. Was, I think, when we first showed them everything we were trying to achieve and we mapped out all the different features and functionality, honestly, we realized what we're proposing was hugely ambitious and of a massive scale. And we had to find a sensible and pragmatic way to achieve a lot in a true kind of MVP fashion, which I think we really have done. I mean, we're still on that journey, we're still learning, but that was really, really interesting. I mean, we wanted the world. Tacit, brought us down to earth a little bit, and we negotiated between ourselves and figured out, yes, do you know what, this is the best approach. But we know now as well, we've got the headroom to grow into all of the features that we want to build in the future. So I think that was the really interesting approach, was letting that experience lead the technology.
Yeah, I have to say, as a user experience person and a marketer, I really like that, because ultimately that means that you're really being customer focused to start and thinking about your consumers, because they're the ones who ultimately have to get their wallets out and pay for services that are going to keep you building such beautiful technology in the background. So, that makes a lot of sense to me. And I think that's great. And it sounds like with Tacit Knowledge, they gave you the help to know how to make your vision a reality and how to set things up right from the start. Is that a good way of saying it?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, as I said, we really explored every option. We were like, shall we build a marketplace literally from scratch, or should we take something off the shelf and try and customize it? So it really, really helped focus what we were trying to achieve. And also, even in the last 8 months, even during discovery, we were still speaking to consumers, speaking to clinics. We have B2C and B2B stakeholders, both equally important to make this whole business work. And actually, we've been adapting the approach as we go. We've been adapting the approach even during the last couple of months on during development, based on the feedback we were getting. So again, having let the experience then lead into the technical decisions, we've then got to a place where actually we can still keep doing that on an iterative basis once we learn something new. We actually speak to the guys and figure out, do you know what? We thought we wanted to build it like this. Actually, this is going to work a lot better. This is the feedback. How do we work that in? So it's allowing us to still be very, very planned and head directionally where we want to go, but it's allowing us to be much more flexible and actually change things much more frequently and not just have to stick with it because that's what we all assumed was the right way to go.
Yeah, which is so powerful in getting to something that really works for any company. I love that. I think that's great to hear, and hopefully great advice for everyone listening. I do want to turn to Michael now, who's been so patient and has sat there listening so nicely, because I know there's a question on my mind, and I think it's probably on the minds of a lot of people out there, which is, okay, Rob, you did a great job at Selfology, and it sounds like fantastic, and Manish did wonderful work with his team to help you. But what if you are a company that already has a platform, you've been doing business with that platform for a while? How do you know, Michael, when is the right time to make a move to a new architecture, which is not a small undertaking?
Yeah, I think, I mean, there's definitely inherent requirements for you to move off. And Rob mentioned one of those, like as soon as you want to upgrade to the next version release and you're sort of bound to upgrade, or there's no compatibility. I think that's definitely a big red flag for me. If we're looking at the likes of Oracle ATG no longer supported, there's just companies out there that found their own end of life, no more supported, no more maintenance. I think there's just inherent requirements to move off. Or maybe there was an acquisition that has made dealing with this certain vendor unattainable or undesirable. But I think irrespectively of all that, I think just don't let anything stop you. If you have a great idea, whether it's entrepreneurship or entrepreneurship, doesn't really matter. Like irrespectively of all those technical reasons, don't let yourself stop you from starting or waiting for some compelling event that catapults you into the future. I think the most impactful trigger event for me as like a VP of marketing or a chief digital officer would be to be limited in my ability to be successful or reach my customers where and how they would like to do business with me as a brand. So it's really that understanding or the acceptance of the composable journey that change is constant. And the only way for me to be prepared and at whatever the world is throwing at me and at my business, just be prepared for that and ready for that. And being composable and being flexible is definitely one approach from a business as well as from a technical perspective. Knowing that all the tools that I have equip me in kind of like that best of breed fashion and allow me to be flexible, be unchanged from IT, similar to what you were saying, like give the powers to the business users. They're in contact with the end customers, let them make the decisions, launch products faster, enter markets faster, and allow me to fulfill my obligations, especially as we're looking at this looming supply chain trouble that we're about to experience worldwide. Like, how can I be flexible from a technical and business perspective to counter those like worldwide events?
Yeah, that's really great advice. I guess the only thing that might stand in your way, if you really believed in this, could be money and budget. And I guess what I'm wondering from all of you, and Michael, I'd love it if you would just kick it off, is there any advice you can give to our audience today on how they could position a return on investment in something like this to get the initial capital to make this change happen?
Yeah, I think 3 thoughts come to mind very quickly. I think number one is from a commercial perspective, as I've alluded to before, I think looking at these all-in-one solutions specifically, they all come with an inherent rev share component or like a blown up revenue component that entails a lot of functionality that you are not taking advantage of. So taking that off the balance sheet is hugely supportive. But also, I think you've made a lot of investments in your business, training people up. I think you can just take all the investments that you have already had and actually repurpose them differently. And so what I mean with that is leveraging a composable framework, given that these are effectively just microservices that you can trigger and call with an API, it doesn't actually matter what like programming language you use, what development language you're leveraging. So all your investments are still valid. None of that goes away. But again, you can go away from some of this proprietary application support that you have to take care of. So that's definitely from a training, enablement, and maintenance perspective, it's hugely important. I think the third point that I want to make is really, if you look at this composable approach, the way that I see it is really an a la carte service consumption. So you can start small, similar to what Rob was saying. If you want to start with content first or your CMS first, go for it. You don't need to build out a fully blown marketplace, B2C, B2B platform, even if that's where you want to go to in 5 years. But start small and sort of have the proof in the pudding about your return of investment and how quickly you can create additional channels that bring revenue and create additional touch points that give you additional revenue. So I think there's plenty of kind of like try something out, fail fast, but also move forward in the right direction, because that's the direction where your customers want to do business with you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's great advice. I would like to hear from Rob and Manish, but we are starting to run short on time and we have a few questions from the audience. So let me ask those. And if anyone would like to comment in addition on this ROI question, be happy to hear your thoughts as well. But here's a question that Manish, maybe we can kick it off with you, but it says, and I'm not sure I completely understand the question, so let me read it and make sure you get it. But in a composable world, where lies the catalog, the commerce solution, the CMS, specialized PIM, and how to sync state on the data? I think it's the data. Wouldn't it kind of require a copy of the data in several systems? So I think that's kind of interesting. What do you think?
Sure. So it depends on the organization and the maturity of the organization in certain way. But if you take the example of Commerce Tool, they have a good enough PIM, which could be the starting point for the product information. But if an organization who already has a standalone PIM that can be integrated into Commerce Tools for the commerce journey. And yes, there is a few challenges around, say, for example, I am running a campaign where I'm building a CMS page in my CMS system, but it has, say, product carousel, and I want to preview that 2 weeks before my campaign. So these things have to be well thought out and designed in a way that the two systems can work together, the dates, etc., can work together, and we can bring in a seamless experience for the business user. So we have implemented solutions where Commerce Tool is the starting PIM. Also, we have implemented solutions where customers has a PIM and the core product data is coming from the PIM, and they may enrich some information in Commerce Tool.
That's great. That's wonderful. Thank you for that. And Michael, I want to turn to you with a question from our audience as well, which is, what kind of business should consider choosing composable and specifically commerce tools? Would you name it mid-size, large corp, or startup friendly?
All of the above, really. I think Commerce Tools historically has been taken up by a lot of early adopters, and it's kind of like the leading or bleeding edge kind of companies, but we also have a lot of very kind of like old school brick and mortar retailers in the enterprise space. So we really cater to a lot. I think the beauty of someone like Commerce Tools is also it's applicable beyond retail. So as long as there's a digital transaction, it could be healthcare, it could be utilities, it could be any sort of B2C, B2B environment, irrespectively of industry. I think coming back to this reoccurring theme, it depends on the maturity of the retailer. I think some, I guess, SMB or mid-market retailers probably are not yet as mature that they would either be able to do this in-house and or might need a partner. And I think with that, in that space or segment, I would probably, the approach is still valid. It's just, do you have a partner or do you have the resources in-house to pull this off from a approach perspective? Because I think one thing that Rob was mentioning the other day is you're also productizing your organization. You're building out your organizational structure to support whatever you're building out. I mean, we see companies that have 2 people or 20 people just focusing on checkout. We have companies that focus very heavily on just promotions or just discounts. If you're looking at companies like Amazon or Zalando, they have like 50 people just focused on discounts and promotions. So it's really like, where are you on your trajectory? Where are you on your maturity curve? But the approach is always valid.
Yeah, that's great. That was really a helpful answer. Hey, you know what? This has amazingly been a fantastic session, and it went so fast that we're out of time right now. So I want to thank our fantastic panelists today. Rob, that was a great story about Selfology, and I think it really brought to light what it takes to implement composable commerce and the benefits you can get from it. Manish, loved your thoughts as well and your help on getting us into some of the technology. And Michael, very pragmatic advice. I think advice from all of you that our audience can use, especially so many of you are at the beginning of the journey. I think you'll be able to use that in helping you get to the next level, get started, and get to the place where you start to see the benefits from implementing this new architecture. I am very thankful that you were all able to join, but I really want to thank our audience today. You were fantastic. I loved your questions. You are wonderful for taking time out from your day to come here and join us, and we really appreciate it. We are looking forward to our next webinar, and we sure hope you can join us. Thanks so much again for joining the Dynamic Talks today, and hopefully we'll see you soon in the future. Have a good day, everybody.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks.